I'm Rachel Edidin.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we are the hosts of Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast where we walk listeners through the ins, outs, and retcons of our favorite superhero soap opera.
We're also the co-hosts of Rachel and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now,
where we talk about the X-books that come out every week.
Now, if you've been watching this series, you may notice that we are not in front of our usual backdrop. That is because we are in Seattle for Emerald City Comic Con, so we are recording this perched on a chair in Miles' hotel room with my laptop balanced on my foot, so apologies if it's a little bit shaky.
Or if the sound's a little bit iffy. We don't have our full setup, but nonetheless, we're dedicated, and we have 7 books to tell you all about.
First, though, really quickly, if you are at Emerald City Comic Con, we really hope to see you at the Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men meetup. It is at 7 o'clock on Saturday. For location details, go to rachelandmiles.com. We've got all of that posted up on the blog. You might have to scroll down a little bit, but it's right there, and yeah.
Hope to see you there. So we'll start with Nightcrawler number 12, written by Chris Claremont, with art by Todd Nauck and colors by Rochelle Rosenberg. So this is the series finale of this volume of Nightcrawler, and if you've listened to previous reviews, you know that for us it's been a mixed ride. There's definitely some good stuff to be found here, but it's also definitely not Chris Claremont's best work. It's had a lot of good nostalgia to it. It's been fun. It's had a lot of that swashbucklery stuff that we've enjoyed with Nightcrawler in the past, but it feels a little insubstantial, and some of the voices have felt a little artificial. Some of the relationships a bit forced, like between Nightcrawler and the pirate character Bloody Bess that he introduced a while back.
And that's something that I particularly noticed in this finale. Like, it feels kind of pat.
I think so, yeah. But, at the same time, there's a lot of good nostalgia. There are a lot of fun references since they're fighting the Werewolves to early Excalibur stuff, which I always appreciate.
That's always a plus.
And the ending it's fun. It's a happy, heartwarming book. And even if it's not my favorite comic in the world, I did appreciate that. So the series is over. I think it's a good time for the series to stop. I don't know that there was a lot more it could have said. But, I think it's, if you like Nightcrawler, if you like Claremont's nostalgic stuff, might be worth a look. But regardless, time to move on to new and exciting titles as Secret Wars blows everything up.
Yeah, it's a pleasant book. It's not groundbreaking, but it's been pretty enjoyable, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we've got Amazing X-Men number 18, written by Christopher Yost, drawn by Jorge Fornes, and colored by Rochelle Rosenberg. This is nominally the conclusion to the Once and Future Juggernaut arc, but it ends with a to be continued, and it ends with a cliffhanger, so, yeah, obviously that's not actually the case.
Might be some editorial confusion there.
What it is really, really fun. It's got a lot of self-conscious nods to early Claremont in ways that work really, really well, acknowledging the past without really diluting the present. And it's a nice issue. We've mentioned before that we both really like, and I particularly like sort of quiet moments in action stories. This is handled really, really well. It stays within the continuity of the story, but it also pulls back a little bit, gives the characters a chance to reflect, and gives Yost more chance to play with a really, really interesting team, whose dynamics he's been doing a great job of developing across this series.
Next is Wolverines number 12, written by Ray Fox, with art by Ario Anandito, and colors by Matthew Wilson. So once again, it's more Fang goodness. He's this time chosen Shogun as the person to take Far Away, but things get a little messed up when Mystique uses her big plan of making his nervous system that exists in an alternate universe appear. That is one thing I enjoy about this book. Wolverines just has crap you would never expect, just really weird stuff happen all the time, and then lots of ultra violence, and it's a fun combination. This is a different issue as things get kind of messed up. And I don't think we have the same kind of psychology to it that we've had for the last couple, as Fang basically analyzes people and messes with them in ways that fit.
Yeah, this is Fang retreating after being soundly defeated and bringing Shogun with him, and it's a more, I think, interesting insight to Fang than Shogun, who's not really all that interesting a character. It resolves some stuff that's been kind of ongoing tension, but yeah, it just feels kind of interstitial.
Yeah, I mean, we do see why Phantom L's been doing random stuff in the last few issues, stealing
that's
stuff.
a thing. That's very much a thing.
That's a last page reveal, so we won't talk about it here, but could be interesting going forward. Now, we're in the second half of the series at this point. I don't know if it's actually going to develop a real plot rather than crazy stuff happening all the time.
Yeah, it's sort of a Team Picker-esque book right now.
It is, yeah, but it is once again unpredictable and enjoyable, and it looks like it's going to end with issue number 20 and thus not overstay its welcome, but I've been having fun with this one.
Yeah, it's been a really fun book, and it's been a really interesting departure from our expectations. Even if we're not super hot on every single issue, I think it's definitely a series worth going back to and looking at if it's one that you've overlooked so far. Next up is Uncanny X-Men number 32. It's written by Brian Michael Bendis, penciled by Chris Bachalo, inked by a whole bunch of people, and colored by Chris Bachalo and Rain Barreto. And man, I've been watching the responses to this issue online, and it's pretty divisive, which surprises me because I thought it was really great.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite issues of Uncanny I've read in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is one that's pretty much designed to hit. I mean, I think to some extent us right in the feels. It's a really good, quiet, introspective Cyclops issue, and especially Cyclops and Havok.
And Cyclops and Emma.
And Cyclops and Emma, I had mixed feelings about those parts. I thought those were the one part of the issue that I thought could have been handled a little bit better. But I loved the Cyclops and Havok stuff, and I am a sucker for that when it's well written anyway. And I feel like, you know, occasionally an artist nails the versions of the characters and the dynamics between them that exist in sort of my head, my platonic ideal of those things. And this is Bendis doing that with those two characters for me.
One of the things I really liked was that it does cut between conversations that Scott is having with Alex and with Emma, and I enjoy that it's the same conversation from his perspective, from as far as his lines. Like, that kind of consistency, and even when Scott doesn't know where his life is going, the fact that he handles things a certain way and his views on the world are a certain way, and that's kind of inflexible, that's totally Scott Summers.
Well,
and I thought that
was
beautiful.
Way he interacts with people happen a certain way, where the changes are mostly dependent on the other people, not him.
Yeah, this is a beautiful character study for really all three characters, obviously, with Cyclops at the center of that, but I loved it. I know the series is almost at an end. We get a brief tease that Scott is going to do something big soon.
Well, and we've been getting teases about him having a Phoenix egg in the Avengers books that are set further in the future. So I assume it relates to that. It's also a really interesting examination of, again, his guilt and culpability in Xavier's death and how that relates to the obligation to carry on Xavier's legacy. The art is really lovely. Again, Bachala's been doing great. Everyone looks really young. That's been kind of, I've noticed that more here, and I think it's because he's not wearing the mask as much. But his face looks weirdly young to me.
But I always love Bachalo's work, and I think he's been a phenomenal choice as one half of the penciling team on this book since the start. And finally, we have actually 3 chapters of the Black Vortex this week. And because we're running a little bit low on time, since we're at a convention, we're going to do them as kind of one big review.
Honestly, I think we should have been doing that from the start, and we should continue to do that with the Black Vortex, because it's such a continuity-heavy crossover. If you're not reading all of the books, there's not really much point to reading any individual one of them.
Yeah, I totally agree. So this week we have chapters 7, 8, and 9. So those are, respectively, Guardians of the Galaxy number 25, which is written by Brian Michael Bendis, with art by Valerio Schiti and colors by Jason Keith. Nova number 28, written by Jerry Duggan, with art by David Baldan and inks by Terry Pallett and colors by David Curiel. And Legendary Star-Lord number 10, written by Sam Humphries, with pencils by Paco Medina, inks by Juan Velasco, and colors by David Curiel. So yeah, a lot of Black Vortex this time around.
I gotta say though, this is the week that actually sold me on Black Vortex. Last week I was pretty much ready to just stop. In fact, I had been arguing that we should stop reviewing them.
She had.
Because it's not really an X-Men story. And man, this week's were really good and fun and very eccentric, but that's not really necessarily what specifically got me about them. But yeah, I'm back on board.
We do see some really big stuff this time around. Spoilers ahoy. Like, the destruction of Hala, like, the Kree homeworld, yeah, it's broken in half right now. And Spartax getting encased in amber, various villains turning into their Black Vortexified characters. Now, specifically, Guardians of the Galaxy and Legendary Star-Lord, Chapters 7 and 9, are where most of that stuff happens. That's where the bulk of the story happens, as far as the X and Guardians teams going after Mr. Knife's various people. And
man, Mr. Knife is such a good name for a villain.
It really is. Unfortunately, he's not a very exciting villain.
That's a shame. There should be a better villain named Mr. Knife. I should be a better villain named Mr. Knife.
Mr. Knife / Rachel Edidin for president. Vote for it, guys. So the issue that stood out, which was interesting, was actually Chapter 8, Nova, number 28. It's very much, I'd call it much more of a tie-in than a chapter, and in fact the solicits describe it that way as well. It's basically the new Nova, Sam Alexander.
Who's like... 15,
he's young.
16,
he's 15.
Like 12. He's a kid. He's such a kid.
It's him, running away with the Black Vortex and ultimately having it taken from him. But this is what you want to do with the tie-in. Like, I've never read Nova. I didn't really know anything about Nova. But this issue was really charming, and by putting it in the context of something that I was reading, now I kind of want to read more Nova. I mean, I doubt I'll buy it because we buy a lot of comics already. But yeah, it was really fun. I actually was hanging out with a friend while I was reading and kept showing her all these panels that made me giggle or smile. So yeah, Black Vortex, I still maintain that this could have been like half the length as a storyline. It would have been fine. But yeah, Rachel, I agree. This was a fun week for it.
Yeah, if you're going to jump in, this is the point too. And like I said before, it's so continuity heavy, it's kind of all or none. And I don't know whether I'd still recommend all of it. I guess we'll see where it goes. But if this week's any indicator, it's definitely on the upswing.
Yeah.
So Miles, that wraps up the reviews. What's our issue of the week?
I think that's going to have to be this week's issue of Uncanny X-Men. We're both suckers for good character work, and this had it in spades.
Yeah, and I mean, specifically good character work with characters who have tended to be habitually underserved, especially in relationship to one another.
Absolutely. I mean, it both makes me want to know what's going to happen next and makes me feel like I know the characters better than I did. And we know these characters pretty well. Yeah. We've read a lot of X-Men, so much X-Men. So, yeah, this was phenomenal. Highly recommended.
You know, there's one thing I want to bring up that we forgot to mention in the review, and that's the question of whether Havok is still inverted.
Yeah, because he really doesn't come across as inverted.
Well, and he mentions, sleeping off a major superpowered event.
Right, which seems kind of like a cop-out. But then again, he also has this plan he's suggesting to Cyclops at the end, and maybe it's to, eat some orphaned puppies or something.
Everyone needs a hobby. If this is inverted, Alex, maybe it's just that he's become an interesting character again.
Ooh, harsh burn.
He just really sucked for a really long time.
Yeah, I suppose. Anyway, okay, so that's our issue of the week. Rachel, how about our panel of the week?
Oh, our panel of the week is from the opening of Guardians of the Galaxy number 25. And it is, so we've seen versions of the Genius in the room surrounded by marked up chalkboards, and this takes it up to a cosmic scale. It's a really good, it's just a really good Beast moment for me, and it's also a really astute nod, deliberate or not, to a bit from Battle of the Atom, when he was gradually losing his mind in the future, trying to basically untangle the space-time continuum. And this is a Beast who has, but with no more satisfying results. I think it's a very, very, very good job of portraying that, and just his relative powerlessness, even post Black Vortex, in the face of that cosmic scope.
So that's it. Thanks for listening.
If you like what you've seen here, please check out our podcast, Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men. New episodes go up every Sunday on rachelandmiles.com, iTunes, and Stitcher. What have we got from this week? This is a big one. This is number 50.
It is number 50, and it's also a big one for continuity because it's among other issues, Uncanny X-Men number 200, The Trial of Magneto, which is really the end of this era of Chris Claremont's run, right around the time that the X-Men went to Asgard. It's a good one. We had a lot of fun with this.
It also features one of the worst Magneto costumes of all time.
Oh, he's going to be wearing that thing for dozens of issues to come.
These video reviews, the podcast, our site come to you thanks to our awesome Patreon subscribers. You guys are rad. If you want to join their ranks, you can do that at the link right below, or if you're watching this at rachelandmiles.com, above as well.
So, yes, as far as this weekend, we are, as we mentioned, at Emerald City Comic-Con.
Woohoo,
and if you happen to be there as well, we're going to be hosting a meetup on Saturday at 7 p.m. We have details about that on our website, so check it out. We would love to see you.
We're also going to be recording a roundtable episode tomorrow night. It's going to go up next week that we're really excited about with some super cool creators. We're going to be putting out a call for questions on that on Twitter sometime today, so keep an eye out.
In the meantime, we are going to attempt to get some sleep and be on the show floor bright and early.
Oh, God. See you there.